So, welcome to another episode of Sticks and Scotch. I'm your host, Rahul Krishna, and today we have two guests. We have a guest co-host, Chris Fuller, and then we have the man who's going to lead us to the depot to the promised land for the next 2 years, my boss, Commander Masson. Commander, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks very much, Rahul. It's a pleasure being here, and Chris, thanks for hosting this. It's an honor for me to be here. I have never, one, been on a podcast with video because I have a little more of a face for radio, and two, when I do a weekly podcast, it's only ever been audio. So this is a unique experience.
Well, a lot of times I mess up the intro, so it's probably best if we did audio. You could ask Chris.
Right?
It was a thing for a while, but yes. So for the most part, we like to smoke cigars, drink scotch. As you can see, well, people who's watching at home can't see is that it's raining outside. And so we decided to bring it back inside like we did last time. So tell us, Commander, where are you from and how did you find your way down to Texarkana?
Well, I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, an hour north in a little town called Mercer. It looks a lot like Hooks or Leary or any of these other small towns. My graduating class was roughly 100. I think it was 104. And so that's how I grew up, small manufacturing town, a lot of industry in that area, and a lot of farmers in the area. And so, was really fortunate to have close-knit communities like the communities around here. But I've been in the Army now 26 years, and a couple of years ago I competed for a brigade command position, which is an 06 command job, and was fortunate to receive the depot as one of my top two choices. And so I chose to come here, and it worked out really well. Yeah, and for two reasons. I wanted to compete for assignments in Texas predominantly because we have lived in Texas for about 8 years, back and forth, even though I have done some assignments, geographically separated from the family. But we would like to retire here one day down the road, so we were hoping to stay for a few more years in Texas without moving again with the Army. So it worked out great for the family. Also, depots are fascinating to me. It's like running a small city in addition to being a CEO of a business. So just a wealth of experience, very challenging work, but rewarding work. So I was hoping to get a job like this, and it worked out.
Okay. And you've been here for how long now?
So I came mid-June to transition with Colonel Fajardo, and I took over 25 June.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was fortunate to come a few times prior to that because the year prior I was at UT in Austin as an Army War College fellow. So I scooted down here this November, or actually last November, then I think February, and then I came for about a week for a conference that we had here. So I was fortunate. Colonel Fajardo pulled me in a little bit early. Was able to come out here several times and kind of see the area and tour the depot prior to coming in mid-June to do a couple-week transition.
What do you think of Texarkana so far?
Oh, I like it. I love it.
Yeah.
So the people here in East Texas are the friendliest we've ever encountered. My wife feels the exact same way. I like the history. I love all the old antiquated buildings, the small mom and pop shops. So it's a great place to be, and I've loved every second of it so far.
Good. We're happy to have you.
And I know you're from here, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Born and raised.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about your career in the Army, places you've been to, places you've been stationed at. I always find that fascinating because you've probably been all over the world, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, I have been all over the world. As an individual soldier, I have been, to Iraq and Afghanistan and Kuwait and Albania, Honduras, Panama, Guyana, and the list kind of goes on and on, Germany and different places for us either, for a few months or for a year, basically, at all those locations. In the States, my family and I have moved around predominantly across Texas, North Carolina, a little bit in the Midwest, in Kansas, and then kind of the northeast area from DC kind of out to New Jersey, and down in Virginia. So when I started off, I started off in Virginia, and we kept getting assignments back there frequently, almost the same as Texas. So I would say about a third of our 26 years so far, we have spent that between Texas and Virginia. So yeah, it's been fascinating. I've loved it. Every time you're deployed somewhere for a long period of time, even without your family, it's still some of the most rewarding experiences that you can have, because the work is important, and you really are working almost 18, 19, 20 hours a day oftentimes, especially in combat situations. And so the people you're with, you become very close to, and they're really friends for life, after that. Yeah.
Do you get to bring like your own staff or people that you work with a lot here when you transfer, or when you?
No, I can't do that at my grade. Some general officers try to pull in a couple of key people. Maybe a sergeant, they can hire into a nominative position like a sergeant major and have that selection. But at my grade, you move, and the staff that you have is pretty much the staff that you get. But there are opportunities throughout most assignment cycles to hire in some soldiers that you might know and pull them in and help build your team. Now the depot is a little unique that we just have 2 active duty slots. So 1 major, which is 2 grades below me, and then myself. So really I can only pull in 1, active duty Army person if I happen to know, that individual, and if the assignment would line up. And in this case, it doesn't line up. He was already selected by Colonel Fajardo, so he'll come. He's going to be a great asset to the depot this next summer. But I would have the opportunity to hire somebody like the deputy commander, right? But in this case, Jamie's staying, for a long time still, and I'm fortunate in that regard. So here I won't be able to build anyone for my team, but I happen to fall in on probably the best team I've ever worked with in my entire career.
One of the things is I was working for Microsoft before I joined the depot, actually.
Yeah.
And working remotely, actually. And the reason I didn't go back is because I liked everybody that I worked with, and I know that's very rare.
Yeah, it is rare,
Yeah.
But I will say this, that I've been really fortunate that in 26 years, I've never had an assignment where I did not make a lot of friends and really enjoy the people I work with. And in fact, in all that time, I only had 1 or 2 supervisors, and we would call them in the Army a raider or a senior raider, that I just didn't really mesh with,
Right.
and that I just didn't care for. But the other, 24 years out of that 26, I have had the best supervisors I could ever have asked for.
So, is it just you and your wife here? Do you have kids that are with you, or?
Well, it's yes and no. I mean, so we have 2 daughters. One is at Texas A&M in College Station.
Okay.
So I have to caveat that here, because we got Texas A&M Texarkana down the road. So she's there. She's studying public health. She wants to be a PA down the road.
Okay.
So she starts her 2nd year this fall. And our other daughter, Kara, she is going to be a senior in high school. And so we have a house south of Houston in an area called League City, which you all probably are familiar with League City, very close to Kemah. And we kept our house there, and Brandy and Kara are going to stay there for at least the first year. We built that house 5 years ago, and so even though I went to Fort Benning and to Austin and now here, we've kind of tried to go back and forth, to those places. So I have a little camper. I have a camper down the street, and I live in a camper down by the river, basically. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, it's worked out. About every 2 weeks, I try to scoot back for a couple of days and see Brandy and Kara. Every so often, Brandy will come up this way, but we have a few animals. We got some things we got to water and take care of out back and stuff. And then obviously Kara's there, and my wife works for a school system during the school year. So she's easier for me to leave and go back for a few days than it is for her to leave all that and come here.
I would imagine Kara was probably appreciative that you didn't make her switch high schools her senior year.
Yeah. It's always tough. Like, there's a balance, right? It's a fine line between, you wish you had more time with the family when you do something like living geographically separated. But what we realized these last few years was once the girls got to high school, we kind of weighed that out and thought that they would be way better off staying in the same spot. And you're right. They have been very thankful for it, because they had moved every 1 to 2.5 years ever since they were born.
Oh yeah.
And so they, you know, every time they made 2 or 3 or 4 really good friends, a year later we left, you know. And some of those friends they've stayed in touch with all these years, but you still, unless you see someone, you know, regularly, it's really hard to maintain the closeness that you had at one point.
Social media probably makes it easier nowadays, but
does,
like back in the day, especially when you were coming
Oh,
from the ranks.
wait, how old do you think I am?
Well, no, like back in the day, all of us in general, like, you know, that would have been hard.
Yeah, that's right. I still sit some days and I wonder, you know, how did we ever meet up even back when
I have no idea.
Yeah, we rode our bicycles
Yeah.
and all of a sudden 9 of us were together, but I don't know how we planned that or what happened, and you just rode around to people's houses. Nowadays, if my wife can't get me for an hour, she thinks the storm got me, you know. And then really the same thing, you know, for me, I'm like, well, I wonder what's going on, you know, I can't reach her, but, you know, and 8 hours would go by before my mom was worried about me, you know.
My wife and I had a conversation recently about, you know, back in the day, you were using your rotary phone to call your friends, and if they were on the phone, you would get the busy signal, and you couldn't reach them, and you know about how different it is now.
Kids don't understand, and I mean, I guess we're all probably from the back. You know, it's easy for us to say back in the day, and we all 3 know exactly what back in the day was.
Really, not too long ago. I mean, the 2000s.
Yeah.
Social media didn't start until like mid 2000, and then late.
Yeah.
I didn't have my
Everybody
first
kinda
cell
caught
phone till I think it was like 1998 or 99,
Oh, yeah,
and
same
it worked like a piece
Yeah.
of crap. First of all,
It
it
was
never.
big. Like,
Yeah, it was.
it looked like a big battery pack or something.
Yeah.
It would flip down.
And it was like yellow, and but I could only call like 3 people and have it work well.
Yeah.
So it was years before you know I had a decent phone, and I remember I came in as a lieutenant in the Army. We got a pager, and so if I got paged, I had to go somewhere and call my higher headquarters and find out what the message
If
was.
you're on the road, you had to go to a payphone.
Yeah, that's Then the Blackberries came out, and I was all happy we had the Blackberry. You could finally do email from your phone.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool, and we just are advancing so fast now. You can do your banking and everything.
Yeah.
So it's unbelievable. I wouldn't want to go back really to that period of time, because I like having so much access on the phone.
Right.
But it was they were good days.
Yeah.
You know, back
Yeah.
then I think relationships were probably a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so I actually sent you this question once. I was like, do you mind if we talk about drones and with the upcoming program?
So we can talk about it because Hadrian has a definitized award, and that means now we are moving forward with that company to bring equipment into one of our buildings, and in that building we are going to eventually jointly assemble some components for small UAS.
Yeah.
So SUAS as we would call it.
Right.
So yeah, small drones. So yeah, that's moving forward in the right direction, and over the course of about the next 4 months, we have almost 6 other companies that will be coming to our depot and assess opportunities to work private-public partnerships and do things like co-production over time. And so for those listening, co-production would be that a company can produce something for the government because we have an agreement, but then also when there's space and time on that line, they could produce something and sell it in the commercial market as well. So they could profit 2 ways, but also they're using our facilities, sometimes for a lease, and sometimes we will just allow that as part of the agreement. They'll bring all their own equipment in. We use their technology and their proprietary resources, and then over time they train our people to replace some of their people, and it's very, very beneficial because you're able to provide space and a place for them to remanufacture something that can be sold in the commercial market, but simultaneously they're providing a service to the government. So that is really what we want to move forward to. The administration, the Secretary of War want us to be more technologically savvy, more rapidly work with industry partners, and we are embracing that wholeheartedly at Red River.
So does something like that create more job opportunities for the people that work at the depot, or
Yes.
maybe even that aren't current employees of the depot?
So Yes, all of those things. So one, these companies, as they bring equipment in, train our people, there are more individuals just staying on the economy in the greater Texarkana area, for example, right? So that's good, right? More folks eating at local restaurants, staying at the hotels, coming to the Eagle, for example, right? Yes, come to the Eagle. We want
And like and subscribe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then also with that, some of those companies will set up a long-term production line, and they will bring some of their employees in. It could be 40 or 50 or whatever it might be for the next 3, 5, 7 years, right? And then in addition, the depot will also need additional employees to, we'll hire and move some into those lines, or if we move some employees and cross-train them from another production cost center, then we will hire and backfill those employees from where they move. So it's just really a win-win in every single way for the depot, for the economies around the depot, and for the government and for private industry. It's a huge win in this area.
I think the term I heard one of the senators say is called GOCO.
Yeah, well, so there's Coco, Go-Go, and Coco, right? So contractor owned, contractor operated, but these are normally what we would call large facilities.
Okay.
Go-Go is government owned, government operated,
Right.
and Go-Co would be government owned, contractor operated. So the organic industrial base is our Go-Go operation. So they're government owned, government operated. Here, like our depot is government owned, government operated. But that doesn't mean that there's only government employees and only government resources there doing that, because really, at the end of the day, we cannot do anything in our government, especially from the Department of War side, without some type of contracted mechanism to augment what we do as warfighters, right? So we have an awful lot of contracted resources on the depot, even though the government overall runs the operations on the depot. So, for example, we have a large labor contract that we can increase the volume of hires against that contract, and it's roughly 35 or 40% of our workforce, and so sometimes based on the situation, it might be easier to turn the levers up and hire more through that contract than it is to hire more government employees. But either way, the majority of those employees are coming from the local economy around here, and then oftentimes what happens is, that contract, after a couple of years, an employee decides, hey, I really want to compete for a government job at a similar grade and a similar skill set, and when an opening happens, they transition from contracted work to a long-term government employee.
And let's see. And could you speak more about the lithium mining by any chance, or is that kind of something that's not in?
So no, we are not going to do any mining or any extraction, as we would call it here, right? But but what we are going to do is help facilitate, various resources for lithium, battery, storage and assembly, and that sort of thing over time, and that is being worked out. So yeah. So
it just seems like there's some pretty cool things that's also happening with the depot.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll give you another example of I won't name the company because we are in just phase 1 of looking at a partnership. I think it'll move into phase 2 and 3 and eventually have a definitized award, then it would be announced. But that company is looking at automating some of our rubber products manufacturing and some of our track manufacturing. And if they can do that, it's really a game changer. It takes a lot of the really manual, hard labor, and it makes it easier. It doesn't mean any employees are leaving. It just means that the work that employee is doing now is monitoring and helping a system or a robotic process do that work in a safer and more efficient manner. And so that is huge. In addition, that same company is going to most likely be able to manufacture for the commercial market and sell rubber products out to commercial market as well.
How much do those potential opportunities factor into your decision to relocate here in Texarkana? Is it like, okay, there's a real opportunity for me to make a difference here?
Oh, you mean me as an actual commander? Well, at the time, I really wasn't thinking about anything like that. And the Army itself has a very deliberate process where we rank order our choices where we would like to go in command, but there's a specific boarded process that happens, and senior leaders in the Army determine higher grade than me, general officer panels, they will determine where our commanders go. And they try to look at what is your choice, where are you geographically located, and what are your desires, so they consider that. But then they also look at what kind of skill sets do you have, what experiences, and have past jobs, are they relatable to the thing that you're looking to do at this point in time? And I have commanded in a strategic command before, so we would call these a strategic command in terms of the Army, because they tie to industry and bigger and broader than what the Army is. So a tactical command would mean that I'm in a tactical unit with tactical Army commanders above me, and everything I'm doing is with Army soldiers for the most part, and preparing to go to war. Right at the strategic level, what we're doing is impacting the ability of that warfighter to conduct their business in a time of war. And we work with industry, and oftentimes all the way up to the policy level inside the department in Washington, D.C. to make those decisions and help better, whether in this case it's the manufacturing and remanufacturing of assets for the long term for the warfighter. Yeah, so for me, that I wasn't really thinking about that part of it. Also, I really didn't know that we were going to start moving this fast with public-private partnerships and commercial solutions and co-production type levers that would make it so fascinating. But I just happened to hit this job at a time where we are really moving rapidly in this direction, and it's good for the whole Army. We're doing exactly what the Secretary is asking us to do, and that's to be more responsive and more adaptive and more technologically savvy as we look at, how can we get better at doing what we're doing, and really how can we transform and do things in a totally different way that is going to make war fighting, more effective in the future against any adversary.
Effectiveness is a big thing with war fighting these days. It's
yeah, and in a depot we have to be effective, but we manage this like a business, so we have to be efficient.
Yeah.
And we use a process here called PBL, so process-based leadership, and really the foundation of PBL is empowering the employees, but also holding them accountable, and then also assessing everything that we do through metrics and processes, so that we can continue to be leaner and really look at the levers that can make us more efficient in the long run. And Colonel Fajardo and Mr. Bass, our deputy commander, were really paramount in taking us through the BBL process. We're about 65-70% there now, and over the next 9 months or so, we will have trained all the ground level, what we would call tier 1 and below employees, and then all the leaders, and we will be fully operating on PBL, which we for the most part are now, but not every single person is trained right now, and we will eventually have that done. But we've already been able to lower our labor rate 2 years consecutively that we charge back to the service components because of all the lean efforts that have happened through the PBL process. Yeah.
I want to back up a little bit. So you're coming out of high school. Did you decide at that point you wanted a career in the Army, and what influenced you? Did you have some family history of relatives in the Army? And take us back and how that process.
Yeah, that's a good question, Chris. I grew up, and I have my great granddad, for example. He's just one member, but I have a lot of family members that have served. Right, so go back a few generations, and let's take my dad's dad, for example. So my granddad, Papa Masson, served in World War II. He was a chaplain assistant. He was involved in amphibious landing in the beaches of Normandy. He had 2 Purple Hearts. And now he never really told many stories about that type of combat because it was very emotional for him. But he did talk a lot about his experience training and preparing and doing things in the Army. My great uncle Nick told some of the same stories. My great uncle Ike served in the Korean War, and so I heard all these stories, and we sat together at dinner at family events and things, and I was always pretty fascinated with it. And my dad served in Vietnam in the Air Force, and then stayed in the Air Force Reserves his whole life. So every day he went to an air base, and he was a civilian there, but his civilian position was tied to a deployable military position. And so a few times a year he would go on a mission, and he would be gone for 14 to 29 days on annual training, or he would take an assignment and be gone for 4 or 5 months in Alaska or Germany or somewhere. And he always brought back some cool gifts for the family, you know, when he went there. And he traveled extensively in Latin countries, so you know, brought back Colombian coffee and you know, cool little things from Peru and Ecuador and all these places. And so I always had this kind of yearning to do what a lot of my family had done. And also I grew up in a small town where we did a lot of outdoor activities. So I'm an Eagle Scout, so I did I did hiking and rappelling and, you know, mountain climbing, all these things. And so the Army had this level of excitement, you know, to me, that I was like, man, that seems like something I would like to do. Now, honestly, I wanted to go into the Air Force most likely because my dad was Air Force, but the school I wanted to go to was called Gannon University, and they only had Army ROTC. And so Dad told me, he said, hey son, you know, when you get there, I'm not telling you got to go into the military. He's like, but I would like you to try out the ROTC program. And I said, Dad, I think I'm going to do it because I've been interested in this forever, right? So I signed up, and you know, you can take military science classes, is what they're called, in ROTC at college, and they're free. The government pays the bill for that, so I didn't know anything else. And you know, I just loved the cadre, the instructors. You know, they were Vietnam veterans. They were just some of the highest caliber people I ever encountered, and they reminded me a lot of my family. And so I did the first semester, and into the second semester, we had an opportunity to compete for a scholarship. And if you did that, though, you had to commit to serve, you know, in the military for a period of time afterwards. And so I thought about it, and I said, yeah, I'd like to do this. And I did. I got awarded, at the time, was called the Tier 1 scholarship. So the government paid for all the rest of my education, waived my room and board at the university if I stayed in university housing. And then when I came out, I was going to be commissioned as a second lieutenant, you know, in the Army. And then what you have to do is, it's kind of competitive your senior year. You go through a process by which you rank what type of job you want, and you're ranked against all the cadets across the country, and then in addition to that, all the cadets across your school. And so, you know, if you were number 300 out of 2,000 that year, you'd be better likely to get something than you would if you were number 1,999 out of the 2,000. Right. And look at GPA and you know, the skills you had, and a score in an evaluation camp. We called it advanced camp at the time. And so I did really well. My friend Brock and I were in the top 2. I think he was number 1, and I think I was number 2 out of the cadets again. And then I did very well across the metric throughout the country. And so my first choice was to be a transportation officer, and I selected Virginia as my first duty assignment location. And I got selected as a transportation officer and went to Fort Eustis, Virginia as my first assignment. And so that's kind of how it happened. And then from there, you know, the rest, I guess, is history. You know, I always intended to leave the Army, right? I wanted to do it for about 4 to 8 years. And my commitment was 4 years active and 4 years reserve. So I did 7 years active, and I transitioned out into the reserves. And that's what I always intended to do. But after a couple of years out, I just really missed the Army, because I felt like, you know, I was working for a great company, a steel company. I liked what they did, but this, you know, wasn't the same sense of purpose that I had serving and working with soldiers and supporting the nation. And so I talked to my wife, and she's like, you know, I miss military families too. She's like, if you want to go back in, I'll follow you wherever you want to go, like we had been doing. And so I went through a program called Call to Active Duty, where they assess you as potential to come back from the reserves. And then the reserves have to release you as well, which they aren't very, at the time we were not very happy about releasing people. But I worked for a great boss, and she was able to, you know, to convince the senior leaders to go ahead and bring me back to the active component force. And so then I went through an accession process and came back in. And it's a painful process afterwards, because your pay, your time and grade, everything is all buttered up for like 3 or 4 years. You can't, they try to get it right, but for years I kind of was behind all my peers. I was off the mark in all sorts of different areas. And really, I just wanted to come back and serve. And statistically, I probably should have just retired as a major lieutenant colonel because I ended up being behind a lot of my peers, right? Well, what happened is it just, from working with great people, having unique assignments, doing well in those assignments too, it kind of propelled me back to where I was and ended up going on making lieutenant colonel, commanded twice as lieutenant colonel, which is very, very rare. I got 2 assignments, that I had to compete for, and it worked out, and then got selected as a brigade commander into this job. And so by coming back, it turned out to be really great for me, but also was nice having that break and kind of working in industry and seeing what the other side was like, because you always think the grass is greener on the other side. And I realized, even though I enjoyed the work, I missed the people and the higher calling of the mission, from the Army side. So we were glad we came back and made that call. But you can't do it without a supportive family. My wife is the linchpin that keeps us going. I mean, she left a great career as an associate manager in banking to follow me around forever, and I mean, we pulled her out of different grad programs. She, she just inevitably never had the opportunity to excel probably the way she wanted to in terms of work. But we also made the decision when we started having kids that we would like one of us to try to stay home with the kids as long as we could. Right. And she said, I'd like to do it and be a great mom and do that. And we don't regret that, because all those years, because I happened to be gone for almost a year right away as both children were born, and my wife did all the heavy lifting. We're all very close still as a family, but without her there every day, we wouldn't, I don't think the girls would be as resilient. We would all be as close and have the same type of family situation we have.
I think you hit on something really important there, is that for somebody who makes a career out of the military, it's the behind the scenes, the family, the spouse, and the family that really makes it work, because you have to be willing to sacrifice a lot to move around and just jump around from place to place, and that's I think a lot of people, maybe unless you're in that lifestyle, you don't really think about that or realize that.
Yeah, it takes the right partner to do it, right? The right spouse, but also that spouse has to be really humble, because my wife never looked at it as a setback. But there were times that I felt bad, and I was like, Brandy, I wish you could have had a really successful career the way I did, because she has all the potential in the world to be probably doing what I'm doing better than I'm doing it, right? But she never looked at it that way. She was always like, hey, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to raise a family, take care of the household, work when I could. And now she has worked for the last few years, full time, because the girls are older now. One's in college. They don't want to spend as much time with us now. Anyways, at the age of 17.
They're like, go to Texarkana, Dad.
Yeah, so, but I don't think we would do anything different if we had to look back and do it again. It all really worked out. Some of it is making your own luck. Some of it's prayer and trying to follow the way the Lord is guiding us. But honestly, some of it's probably luck, too, that we were just fortunate to be in great places with great people. I worked for great bosses. I have friends that are way more talented than me, and they just did not get along with the leader that they worked for, and their career suffered for it, and so some of that is, I worked hard, but I also just seemed to, be able to mesh with everybody that I worked for.
You mentioned great bosses. Do you have somebody that
it's
like, hey, I'm going to take you under my wing and kind of be your mentor?
It's just, honestly, it's almost too many to name, right? But if I had to just name a few, my 1st and 2nd Battalion commander, when I was a lieutenant, to this day, I love both of them, and one is still a close family friend to this day. His name's Craig Hines. He retired as a post-brigade command colonel, like me, and the one prior to him was Dave Kalita. So both of them retired as colonels, post-brigade commanders. Fantastic individuals. And then if you jump forward like many years later, when I was a lieutenant colonel, I commanded 2 times, and I worked for the best leaders both of those times. So Brian Ducote is now a brigadier general, and so that's how great he was as a brigade commander, and he did 2 brigade commands, by the way. Major General retired Dawn Hill, super fantastic individual, probably the best counselor that I'd ever had in terms of how we guide and mentor and lead other people. Brigadier General Raphael Heflin, when I was lieutenant colonel, he was a colonel, and he went on to become a brigadier general. Colonel Josie Carrasquillo and Brigadier General Jimmy Canlis, who goes by Vegas because he was a pilot in the Air Force, and Air Force General Officer retired. That's just a little team right there that in the last 6 years or so really helped propel me. They're really, honestly, they're personal friends in addition to being professional mentors, and I think that's something really special. A lot of people say, hey, you can't be friends with a subordinate, and to some extent, that's true, right? If Rahul, you and I were out having bourbon every night and out going crazy on the town when we were 25, and I worked for you,
right.
That's not going to work out well, right?
Yeah.
But if your boss and you have dinner once every couple of weeks, you get to know their families, and down the road when you leave that assignment, you can call each other and talk as really as friends in the profession of arms that we serve. I think that's absolutely fine. And every assignment I've left, I had enlisted and officer friends to this day, and I've stayed in touch with them. And at the end of the day, that none of us have ever crossed the line where we're doing things that are unprofessional in that relationship, but I still would consider them friends, and we would have each other's back for no matter what happened. I could call First Sergeant Brian Wofford, for example, right now, and if that guy, he's getting ready to deploy, but if I really need something, he would drive 2 or 3 states and come and try to help me out. And that's the type, but he worked for me, and we worked together in other assignments. He's an senior enlisted, and I'm an officer, but we're still friends, and I think you got to have that relationship. My sergeant's major that, I commanded with, Alexis Holmes, I mean, these guys, they're friends for life, especially when you're battle buddied up. Each commander has a senior enlisted counterpart. That's invaluable. You're friends for life with that.
I have a saying people lead managers, not jobs. But so it's pretty cool that you have so many that you gotta.
Yeah, really. I mean, I could probably make a list of 40 just really quick too, and name them. But it would just take a while to do. But again, no, I've had friends that have not been that fortunate. Right? They have worked for a toxic leader, someone that was self-serving and out.
Me?
Oh, you have that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a shame, really, right? But again, that's a small percentage of our force in the Army. However, there are those characters out there that are more concerned about their promotion and their reputation and their arrogance, and less concerned about taking care of the people.
Right.
And my old friend, Jimmy P. used to say, "Hey, Chris, relationships matter." He's like, we're in a relationship business, and if you're not willing to have a relationship with people, then we got to get out of this business, And he was right.
I think that's important in any, certainly in the military and the Army, but really any aspect of business and or life. It's our interactions are about building relationships with people, and when you're in a position of leadership, your team is only going to be as good as the relationships that you build with them. And
That's a great point.
I think that I've had the opportunity to own a couple different businesses and have people that worked for me, and I've always tried to make sure that we're building relationships, because I think that's when you get your best performance from people, is if you're like, okay, I have a good relationship with this person that I'm putting myself on the line for.
It's a culture of trust, really, right? My old boss, now Brigadier General Ducote, created a document in 1st Security Force Assistance Brigade when I was a commander there, and it was called SFAB Culture, 1st SFAB Culture. And it kind of testified, to what we do, who we are, and how trust is paramount into that. And we're doing the same thing at Red River, by the way. So we're staffing a one-pager now, all the way down to the lowest employees, so they have input. And it, you know, but at the end of the day, if Rahul, if you can't trust that I'm gonna take care of you in the best way, or you're worried that when you give me bad news, I'm gonna yell and scream at you, and we don't have the right culture, right? But if I can trust you, I know, hey, Rahul's gonna do his job every single day. He's going to get after it. I need to let him do it, not micromanage him, not come down on him when he makes a mistake. Underwrite that mistake sometimes, because that's how we learn, right? Then we're always sitting there like, man, I want to do good for my organization, but I want to do good because my boss has my back, you know. And I think, and that's the type of culture of trust we have to have, you know. But yes, and I know you. I mean, obviously, relationships here for the Eagle is probably really key. I mean, you have to be friends with, you know, everyone around here, and the customer's always right too, I guess. You know, in your business, your line of work.
Look, I want to talk about your. You grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and I'm from Ohio, so.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, okay,
battlegrounds over
here. Yeah, we never liked going over there. No.
I'm sorry, before you go ahead, I've actually lived in Moon Township.
Oh, that's not too far down by Pittsburgh.
Yeah, by the airport.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a Pittsburgh guy, and you know, y'all being from that general area. You know, I'm from Cincinnati, Western PA. It's always like blue collar, you know, tough. It's a like, you know, football's huge here in Texas, right? But man, Western PA, there's a lot of football players that come out of Western PA, and
wrestlers too, you know.
Wrestlers.
Yeah,
wrestlers. I don't think I ever knew that.
Well, I mean, and I'm not talking about professional wrestlers. I'm just talking about in high school and in college. A lot of, you know, wrestling is huge in Western PA too.
Yeah. It kind of fits the blue collar type mold,
yes.
right? So, did you grow up as a wrestler, or did you grow up playing football, or?
No, I grew up, you know, my dad was a football player at my school, right? I went to the same high school my parents did, you know, we're all from the same small area. And he busted his knee up pretty good in football. And so my mom always asked me, she's like, hey, I'd rather you don't play football. And so I didn't. I played baseball, and I ran track and cross country. And so those were like the sports things I did. And then I did, you know, I was on the speech and debate team. And did a few other things, student government and that sort of stuff, and eco team. We were from such a farming area that we had an ecology team, you know, if you can believe that, right? And so I did those type of things, you know, and I was in scouts, so that occupied a lot of my time, and I did a lot of stuff at my church. You know, I grew up Catholic. My granddad took me to a lot of church activities, and we did fish dinners through Lent on Fridays, and I was a Knight of Columbus, you know, member and all that. And so, but yes, I went to every Friday night football game, watched my buddies out there playing. You know, every person that I was friends with played a sport for the most part. I can't even name anybody in my school that didn't play some type of sport, you know. So, you know, I was a little bit thinner back then. Obviously, you know, you might find this hard to believe, but I was thinner at one point in time.
We all were.
So I could run pretty fast. I was really good. I went to districts a few times, and I was pretty good. But, you know, I can't imagine running that fast now. I don't know if someone wanted to pay me $1 million. I'm not sure I could ever run a 5-minute and 30-second mile again. It would probably kill me.
Do you think growing up in that area that's kind of known for its toughness and blue collarness, did that help you in any way?
Yeah, that absolutely shaped me, Chris. I mean, my granddad worked as a crane operator for Sharon Steel, a steel company. My dad in his early days was a supervisor in a steel mill. And my dad, by the way, now, you know, grandkids think he's real nice and kind, you know, but Dad was a different guy back in his 20s and 30s, right? But it was, hey, you didn't go to the doctor unless you absolutely had to, right? You smashed your finger with a hammer, and you had about 10 seconds to shake it off, and then we got back to whatever.
The way healthcare is, you probably should be like that now.
Yeah. So, but there was and my mom was probably the best example. She told you. You know, she told you very quickly that, hey, you're putting on too much weight, or no, we're not going to do that, or you need to get out of here, or whatever. And it's that type of environment. You know, they do anything for you, but they also expected people to fend for themselves, work very hard, and be proud of what they did, And so it would absolutely shape me. Our teachers, in high school, elementary school, they were super dedicated. My dad served on the school board for 10 years. He was also a township supervisor, the zoning officer, planning commissioner, all these things in our township. He did so many things in the day that I can't imagine doing all that in a day now. But that was just, what he wanted to do to better, the area around there and better his community. And everyone was like that. A lot of my friends now, there's that old country song that I got, famous friends you've never heard of, right? It's the same thing. I can go back now. I got cousins that, are doing important work. I've got a friend that he's a commissioner in our town. I know the local sheriff. I know all the people, right, that I grew up with are doing important work around there. And they don't stop working. They open up a small business, they run a business, they work here, they work there, they have a garden, they raise their kids. And so it was a great place to grow up. And the only reason we won't ever retire there is it's too chilly there in the winter. It's a beautiful area. I love it in the fall, love the summer, but the winter and the spring is brutal. And so we're probably going to ride it out in Texas, because now you got to be resilient here in the summer. That's for sure. I'm wearing cowboy boots and jeans now, but I'm not. But it's still, you're gonna have to shower 3 times a day. That's the way it is.
Long and hot.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, anyway, looks like my wife is telling us to wrap it up a little bit.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Well, hey, we did have. What do you want to say? What we were drinking while we had this? No. Okay.
But I will say this, Chris. I want to thank you for letting us have this spot again. It's always appreciative.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's and Commander, I know you have a lot going on, and I love that you came and talked to us.
No, I loved it, Rahul.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you, and thanks, Chris, for this opportunity. Anytime we can tell the story about the hard work we're doing at the depot, about the dedication of the people there, and really why this area is special, I think we got to take advantage of that.
Well, we'll have you on again soon. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
All right.
And,
well, I got to help you on my little podcast, which is only audio. Yeah.
All right.
And I will ask the hard questions.
Yeah. I'm pleased to see it.
That's how we know it's time to wrap it up.
Yeah. Time.
We appreciate you coming.
For sure.
This was, I think, for a lot of people that may listen to the podcast, pretty informative about how the depot works and some exciting things that are going on and that kind of thing. So appreciate you coming out and battling the elements outside.
Yeah.
We really needed the rain, but
We did need
now.
to rain, but yet it's been the only 2 rainy days. Was yesterday for an hour and then today for 2 hours out of the last 14 days.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
All right. Well, appreciate it again, and
Hey, thanks very much, Chris, for your time.
Yeah,
Thanks
for sure.
All right, you guys take care.